Hello everyone, I'm Lady.
And I'm Alana.
And this is Spookery. Welcome everybody. Welcome back to Spookery. Welcome. Alana, welcome. Welcome to you.
Welcome, Lady.
Welcome to this. Welcome to this.
This, oh God. That's how you want to start the episode. Welcome to this.
Look.
Buckle in, guys.
We all know what we're here for. We know what this is. This is my mass murder episode. This is mass murder. So this is, it is this. So yeah, my topic this week that we are covering is mass murder, and the mass murder that I am covering today is my mass murder of the German language, because this is gonna be a struggle bus.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, so I'm going to be struggle busting through a lot of language barriers, because I think I mentioned at the end of our last episode that I had to use Google Translate for a lot of my sources. So I'm just saying it right now that there are going to be a lot of German words, and I am going to massacre them. And I am so sorry, Germany. I am so sorry for all of the crimes that I am about to commit. But I tried. I looked up so many of them, and, you know, sometimes Google be wrong.
That's all we can ask you to do is just try. We're doing our best here, and, you know, the good thing is I don't know German better than you do, so, I mean, I'm not gonna correct you.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, you are very aware of what my German accent sounds like, which is an abomination.
It's beautiful.
My German accent is up here, and we are going to not do this for the story, but I'm not going to attempt to do that for any of the story, but just so you know that is the only German accent I can do, and it is basically Jürgen from the Great British Bake Off, and I apologize to everyone. And so I'm just getting my apologies out of the way before we get into this, because it's a German story, it's a German mass murder. I don't know German, I can't speak German, I've never learned German, I don't think I know a German. And the only German accent I can do is the Juhu Big Summer Blowout from Frozen. It's not a good time, so
You're doing your best, ma'am.
doing my best.
And I appreciate you for it. I'm ready for this German tale.
It is a German tale. It is yes. Okay, so that we're getting that out the way. I'm airing this. So the story that I'm going to tell you today is a little mass murder known as Hinterkaifeck. Have you heard of?
I feel like I've heard that word.
Hinterkaifeck. It's a very famous mass murder. It's a very famous German mass murder. It's more commonly referred to as the Hinterkaifeck Murders because Hinterkaifeck is a location. But I am referring to this story as Hinterkaifeck because the mass murder is the key focus, but there is so much tragedy before the mass murder that we need to talk about that just focusing on the murders doesn't feel good. So we're going to talk about the whole tragedy of Hinterkaifeck, not just the mass murder of Hinterkaifeck.
Gotcha. Painting that whole picture.
It's the context. I love the context.
The
context of this story is so steeped in the story that there's very little context for me to just air out at the beginning. So, we're going to get into it very shortly. But yes, we're talking about the Hinterkaifeck Murders. So the Hinterkaifeck Murders, it's a story about a German family known as the Gruber family. And it is about the events that took place on the 31st of March in 1922. So it's an old-timey, because I just can't get myself out of the old-timers.
That's all right.
Yeah.
Get it out of your system.
You know, like Bonnie and Clyde, Ouija boards, Hinterkaifeck, we doing it. And you will probably, this will sound familiar, because it is a very, very famous case. This is, I think it's considered the most gruesome and puzzling crime in German history outside of the World Wars.
Oh, okay.
It is.
I've heard of the name before, but I know nothing about it.
Yes.
At all.
So the Hinterkaifeck Murders, these events took place on the 31st of March, 1922, and our victims are Andreas and Cecilia Gruber, who were 63 and 72, respectively. Their daughter, Victoria Gabrielle, who was 35 at the time, and Victoria's children, Cecilia and Joseph.
Okay.
So they lived in a small farmstead in Upper Bavaria with their brand new housemaid, Maria Baumgartner, who was 45 at the time and had just started work that day.
Oh.
So it's a
shame.
Yeah.
Bad day to start.
Really just really unfortunate timing all around.
Yeah. I mean, people have talked about that first bad day, but I think that takes the cake.
Yeah. No, this, I think, we'll get into it, but she was not there for very long. So pretty much like this whole farmstead is just steeped in tragedy from before the mass murder. It's just decades of misfortune, and I really do think that the misfortune that came before does contribute to the story. So we're going to talk about the history of Hinterkaifeck, which is this Bavarian farmhouse, and pretty much the decades of misfortune that has occurred in this house. So
yeah, give me the context.
Give me the context. All right, so also before we get into the story, I'm also going to flag that there is a trigger warning for this particular episode. We are going to be talking about incest. And I guess in some reports, it's not just incest, but it's also sexual assault. So just know that is in this story. So if this is not a story for you, if mass murder and incest is just not for you, that's okay. We'll see you next episode for our lovely conspiracy theory that Alana is putting together as we speak. But if you're here for the long haul, let's get into this tragedy.
Yeah.
But yeah, let's talk about the family history. We'll talk about the events right before the crime itself, and the aftermath. It's also an unsolved crime, so we're going to be talking about theories and possible suspects. And I'm gonna state it right here. I went into the story with a very clear bias, and I thought I knew what was going on. I thought I knew who did this. And as I was doing research, it all kind of fell apart for me. So I don't have a clear suspect in mind. And maybe as we're talking about it, my perspective will shift. I really hope it does. But as of right now, as I was doing this story, I thought it was a particular person, and I don't think it's that person anymore. I'll tell you at the end who it is, but we're going to get into the story first. All right.
I'm very interested to see, who we all draw our conclusions to first. If we followed the same path as you, or if we end up getting straight to the end like you did.
I think, maybe you'll travel the road less traveled by, and it'll make all the difference. Who's to say?
Right? Maybe we'll come up with a completely new theory that you hadn't thought of before.
You know, I can only hope. I've got a couple of suspects that we'll discuss at the end, and the floor is open, guys. Like, please. I'd love to hear theories.
Well, I'm ready.
Anna?
I'm totally ready. Bring it on.
All right, so let's go into the context. Let's talk about some context.
The context.
All right, so Hinterkaifeck. It's an isolated farmstead about 70 kilometers or 43 miles north of Munich. It's located in Upper Bavaria. It's just outside of what used to be Kaifeck. So Hinterkaifeck means behind Kaifeck. The area is not called Kaifeck anymore. It's now a place called Weidhofen. The farm was first built in 1863, just before Bavaria became part of the German Empire. So this farm was not built on German land, but it very quickly became German land. And
Gotcha.
Bavaria joined the German Empire for World War I. Yeah, so Bavaria is new to Germany. Just keep that in mind.
Gotcha.
It's also not known who built the farm. I could not,
Okay.
I've scoured through documents. I could not find who built the farm. I don't think it's known. Those documents have either been destroyed or lost. But it was acquired by a man named Johann Assam, who then transferred it over to his son, Josef Assam, on April 24th, 1977. So we'll talk more about the Assams in just 1 second. But first we're going to talk about Cecilia Assam, who we'll later know as Cecilia Gruber. So Cecilia Assam was previously Cecilia Sandwache and was born November 27th, 1949 in Gerlsbach, Bavaria.
Oh my goodness.
I'm so sorry. It's not, every time I look at these long words, I just want to I want to put some oomph into it, and it's just...
You are doing a heckin' good job, ma'am. I mean, with my limited knowledge of the German language, I think you're killing it.
So, please, people write it. Tell me if I'm doing it. Tell me if I did it right. Tell me if I did it wrong. I need to know. I need to be able to correct my mistakes.
I'm purposefully avoiding saying any of the names because I feel like I will do an even worse job.
Oh,
so.
I'm not. You're not safe from this because it's. I'm letting you know. Okay,
We'll get there when we get there.
So Cecilia Sandwache, she was born to Martin Sandupfer and Monica Sandhuter. Yes, she had 4 siblings, and she married Josef Assam, the son of the man who acquired Hinterkaifeck, on May 14th, 1877. So through this marriage, she became the co-owner of Hinterkaifeck, which looks, from what I can see, seems to be a very common thing, is that when you married into a farm owner or someone who owned land, you became the co-owner. It wasn't discriminatory in any way, shape, or form. Like, if you were the wife, if you were the farmer's wife, you had just as much a claim to the farm as your husband. So,
yeah.
Good on you, Germany.
Yeah.
Good on you.
We love to see it.
Yeah. So, after the marriage, she lived there with her husband, his younger sister, Victoria, and her father-in-law, Johann. Yes, I saw your face. Yes, that's another Victoria, different Victoria.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was like,
Yes, this is our second Victoria. Okay. You don't need to worry too much about her. Can
we call one Vicky, maybe? Like,
I would call this one Vicky. I would call this one Vicky, but I would say come up with a couple more, because this is not the last Victoria we've seen.
Is that, did they struggle to come up with other names? Is that just their favorite name?
You know, there's just a lot of people with the same name, and I would say they're very beautiful names, and I don't blame them one bit for wanting to share this beautiful name amongst the community.
It is a great name, but I mean, there's a lot of other beautiful names too.
As far as I can tell,
fight over the one.
In Kaifeck at the time, there were only 5 names, and everyone had one of 5 names.
Yeah, okay. That's, I mean, to be fair, that's how it was in, like, you know, early in Italy and stuff. It was like, there's like, just every other person is Maria.
Yeah. We have a Maria, so there you go.
That's beautiful.
Yes.
All right, continue.
So in this house, we have Cecilia, we have her husband, Josef, we have Victoria, and we have her father-in-law, Johann. So Cecilia and Josef had their first child in 1977, and she was a daughter who unfortunately died shortly after being born. Then they had a son named Martin in 1879, and a daughter named Cecilia in 1881.
Okay, we're just recycling those names again.
Which is really pretty names. That's our second Cecilia. Right. I hope you're keeping count.
So it's Victoria's turn next. Let's go. Let's keep it going.
After that, they had another son named Andreas in 1883. So
of course they did.
So sometime around 1880, I couldn't find a specific date, Victoria, I guess you're Vicky.
What?
Victoria,
okay.
you're Vicky.
I'm like, which one?
Yeah, the sister-in-law. The original Victoria hasn't been born yet. She's not around yet.
That's fair.
So this Victoria, first Victoria, she got married and she left the farm. She got out of there. She was like, you know what? There's too many Victorias in this town. I'm out of here.
Yeah.
So then Johann, her father-in-law, passed away January 3rd, 1884. And her husband, Josef, tragically died a year later to pneumonia.
Oh.
Yeah, so within a span of like 4 years, she is now the only one in this house with her small kids.
How big is this farm? Have we stated how big this farm was?
It's a pretty decent sized farm. I will post pictures of what the farm looked like and how it was configured on Instagram, because it is important to kind of know the layout, because the layout does kind of come into it a little bit later. It's a strange layout from what I could see. It's a lot of buildings kind of connected, but it's like there's a main farmhouse. Then connected to the farmhouse is a stable, and then there are 2 barns connected to that. So it's kind of like in an L shape.
Okay.
I mean, it's a decent size. You know, a family can live there comfortably. But it's also, I think from what I can see, the farmland was big enough where you needed help to manage the land.
Gotcha. That's why I wasn't sure, like, you know, her being there by herself, if she...
Yeah.
Is this manageable? Is she good? Does she need help? Like,
a lot of my sources do make mention to a lot of farmhands, and we'll talk about a couple of them throughout the story. But so there were farmhands that did come in to help. But as of right now, it's her small kids, and hired help. And, you know, as a woman in the 1800s... this is not a good outcome.
No. I mean, not the ideal outcome for her, but she's, you know, doing what she got to do.
Yeah.
I respect it.
So around this time as well, her son Andreas, who was our youngest, also passes away. It's implied that he died before his father. I could not find when he specifically died. There's no there's no death certificate. It's just sort of like he just stopped being a character and we never see him again, so... it's implied, though, that he had died before his father because he wasn't there to inherit the farm before his father passed away. So kind of like the way these kind of things worked was like when you had an established heir, they would inherit the farm. They would have some sort of inheritance that they would like be awarded. And little baby Andreas did not have any, so
unfortunate for little Andreas.
Yeah, so we're not sure, but he did pass away, unfortunately, around this time. So Cecilia now has this farm, 2 young kids, and this is 1885. So this is not an easy time as a single mother.
Yeah.
So Cecilia made a decision, and she married one of her farmhands named Andreas Gruber on April 14th, 1886.
Another Andreas.
This is the original Andreas, the first one we talked about.
Oh, it is. Okay, we're bringing him back.
So we
gotta number these people. I'm getting confused already.
This is the Gruber. We are back now. We have Andreas and Cecilia Gruber.
I should have. The name makes sense. I should have recognized.
We only talked about it briefly. You're okay. So this marriage happened less than 1 year after the death of her husband. So this was a really quick turnaround. And I don't blame her. Times are tough.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
You do what you gotta do.
Do what you gotta do, Cecilia. So let's talk about Andreas Gruber.
Yeah.
So he was born November 9th, 1858 in Grandstetten, Bavaria, to Andreas and Martina Gruber.
I wouldn't have guessed.
We just love the names. He was 6 years younger than Cecilia, and he was the eldest of at least 5 siblings, and grew up on his parental farm in Grandstetten.
Okay, so he's a hardworking dude, young buck, and she's like, I'm going for someone who's gonna last longer than I am.
Yeah, I mean, she wasn't particularly old at this time. He was helping around the farm. But what's interesting is I couldn't find a lot about his upbringing, but I do know that even though he was the eldest son, he was not in line to inherit his family farm. Like, he was not even in the running. It was instead awarded to the second oldest brother, Michael, in 1893. So something was going on there. Either like he had a disagreement with his parents, or there was something
cut out of that will real quick.
Yeah, there's something going on there, and like we'll see some of his behavior later. And I'm like, maybe this was an early warning sign. But
yeah,
just so you know, he was not in line to get his Grandstetten farm in the slightest. So instead, he was a farmhand for other people's farms, particularly Hinterkaifeck.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yes. So, Andreas and Cecilia then have 3 kids. A daughter named Victoria, who is the Victoria we will be talking about.
Beautiful.
In 1887. A daughter named Sophie in 1889, who tragically dies in 1891 at age 2. So, she did not live very long. And another daughter who died shortly after being born in 1892.
Oh, man.
So, like I've said, there's a lot of death in this house, and it really is just kind of, it's of the time. It's a Germany in the 1800s. This is not a time to be alive, quite frankly.
This is not a time to be alive. If you want to live, don't be born then.
This is not the time frame. It's like death was really, really common, and death is very casual in this story, which is what makes the mass murder so tragic. Is because there's a lot of death in this story that is just, it's unavoidable, and then someone goes as far as to commit a crime later on that is this horrible, horrible thing. It's such a jarring reality of like casual death to intended death. Yeah. It's quite a time.
Because there is, like you said, a very big difference, I think, like you said, just between, like, death is, we accept, we're all going to die one day. It's going to happen. But it's a very different thing when it's taken from you, when it's completely out of your control and it's the doing of another person. It's an intentional act. That is a completely different topic. It's a completely different feeling. There's not even resolution to that as the family, Yeah. I'm sure, as we will see, you said this isn't solved, so.
Yeah, it's just... Yeah, it's just a really weird feeling where you talk about how much death happened in the house that was just sort of like, it was just sort of accepted and it was unavoidable and it was just of the time. And then the death comes later on and it's just like, whoa. It's just a weird juxtaposition. And I think it's why talking about all of the death in the house before is so important. Because it really does frame just sort of, I guess, the energy of this house, this feeling, this vibe that this farmhouse had. From like pretty much the beginning until the end, it was just full of death.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah. I mean, not in a good way, but I mean, it's interesting.
Yeah, and we'll talk about it. We'll get into it.
We'll talk about it.
Yeah. So I'm gonna recap on all the kids because there was a lot of births, a lot of deaths. So as of right now, we have Martin Assam and Cecilia Assam, who were the 2 kids that survived from the first marriage. And now we have Victoria Gruber. There were 7 in total. We only have 3.
Wow.
Yeah. So in 1902, Cecilia Assam, the daughter from the first marriage, is married to a man named Josef Staringer, another Josef, and leaves the farm. So she gets out. Okay. She's like, don't want to be here. See you later. I'm going to go marry this lovely Staringer. Bye-bye, buddy boo. Yeah, she gets out of the farm. So there's another Cecilia gone. Shortly after, Victoria becomes the heir to Hinterkaifeck. Okay. And in some sources, she was listed just directly as the owner. So either she was the heir or the owner, but she was officially made heir owner of Hinterkaifeck in 1914. So then Victoria, well, I mean, and also keep in mind, she also has a brother, an older brother, a much older brother named Martin.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I guess that this is I'm going to assume that this is Andreas's doing. Martin is from the first marriage. He's not a Gruber, he's an Assam. So Victoria being the only Gruber, I guess like this is favoritism at its finest, but...
Yeah, he's like, no, this is going to my kid, not that other guy's.
But I think that goes to show what the relationship between the Assam kids and the Grubers was like.
I'm sure it also, like... I mean, he was the oldest himself who did not get to inherit his own farm, so it's almost like a weird like revenge thing that he's like doing to someone else's kid of just like, well, I didn't get my family farm, neither are you. Deal with it.
You have fucking hit the nail on the head, ma'am. I think so much of Andreas's behavior as a parent, as a guardian, as a farm owner, as a person, comes from this feeling of I've lost out. I should have been the owner of this farm. I should have had so much that should have been mine, and I was denied that. So I'm going to take it out on the people around me. And we'll get into that very, very shortly. But I think you're very much like, I didn't get my farm, so I'm going to take it out on somebody else.
Yeah, the parallels are not usually so transparent and just obvious. Yeah, but sometimes they are, and you're just like, wow, sir.
And that's why I think talking about the history of this farm is important, because it really, like, most sources that I found didn't even talk about these kids and the fact that there were other kids in the house up to a certain point. They're not even mentioned. It's just like, here are these 5 people and they're maid, and they lived in this farm and everything was fine, and then they died. And it's like, there's so many people and moving parts in this story, and it's just like they're so important that you've got to understand what's going on around this farm. Like, you have to know. And just here I am. I'm giving it to you.
Yeah. No, we appreciate the research, man.
I'm here for it. So, Victoria Gruber, she is heir of Hinterkaifeck. She then marries a man named Carl Gabriel on April 3rd, 1914. So pretty much the year that she becomes the heir of Hinterkaifeck, she marries a man named Carl Gabriel. She becomes Victoria Gabriel, which is how she got her last name.
Ah, okay.
Carl is then drafted into military service that same year and died on December 12th, 1914 in France.
Wow.
Yep, in World War I.
That's unfortunate.
You gotta remember.
So there's only 2 kids actually alive at this point.
No,
and one of them is...
No, so there's 3 kids alive. One has left the farm and gotten married. So she's out.
Yeah.
Now there's 2 kids on the farm who are both alive, Martin and Victoria. Victoria's husband, she's just now... Victoria's married, but her husband moves into the farm because she's the farm owner.
Gotcha.
Her husband is immediately drafted into World War I, and he dies very shortly after in World War I.
Gotcha.
So... now we have a widow who is pregnant. Yep. Next month, after Carl dies, Victoria gives birth to their daughter, Cecilia Gabrielle, January 9th, 1915. So there's another Cecilia, but I'm going to call this Cecilia Celie, which was her nickname. That's what her family called her. So I'm going to refer to this young daughter as Celie for the rest of the story. She is unfortunately one that is mentioned at the beginning.
Gotcha.
So she is another victim of Hinterkaifeck. And we're going to call her Celie now also so we don't confuse her with her grandmother. Because
that will get confusing.
There's a lot of Cecilias, there's a lot of Victorias, there's a lot of Josephs, and there's a lot of Andreases.
Hey, they picked some good names and they said, why, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
You know, I agree. They're very wonderful names. So this is the point now where we're going to get into our trigger warning of incest. So if you don't want to hear it, please skip ahead. I'll put it in the show notes where you know. So just so you know, we're going to get into this. And unfortunately is very deeply woven into the story.
Yeah.
So, 1915, Andreas Gruber and Victoria Gabrielle were convicted of having an incestuous relationship for over a 3-year period from 1907 to 1910.
That's not what I expected. 3 years whole.
3 years.
Whole.
They were convicted for 3 years, but that doesn't mean it didn't last longer. It doesn't mean that it stopped.
Those are 2 facts I'm not happier knowing.
Unfortunately, remember, this is 1915.
Yeah.
when they were convicted, and the time period is 1907 to 1910, which is 5 years before. I am just gonna put it out there. I don't think, this is just my opinion, I don't think it was just a 3-year contained period.
Yeah. I don't.
Yeah.
So what's the punishment for that? Like, you get convicted and then what?
Well, let's get into it, shall we?
Yeah.
Because I haven't even told you how they were convicted.
No, I tell me all the details.
I will tell you the details. So, according to the reports that I can find, and get ready because this is a little confusing, Victoria was really good friends with her neighbor Victoria.
Of course she was. Why wouldn't she be?
I think it was her next door neighbor, or it was a very close neighbor, Victoria Schlittenbauer, and that's an important last name. So remember Victoria Schlittenbauer, and the two got very close. They were very close families. So after getting close, Victoria Gruber confided in Victoria Schlittenbauer that Victoria could no longer stand being in front of her father because he always wanted to have sexual intercourse.
Oh.
And she confided in 1915. So, once again, this is why I don't think it was just over a 3-year period. But, do with that what you will. Also, from what I can see, this was not a consensual relationship. It wasn't that, they were, there was something going on. I really do think that this is Andreas Gruber manifesting something from his childhood that I couldn't find anything about. And he was just a gross and really awful person, and he hurt someone who trusted him.
Yep. Unfortunately, there's too many people in the world like that.
Yeah, it's a really, really awful thing. Well,
it's good that she confided in someone.
Yeah, she was like, I don't like this.
Yeah.
Also, Victoria Schlittenbauer hears this, and she's like, whoa. So she goes and tells
bomb
her.
drop.
Yeah,
like,
she's
you just like casually throw that out there. They're like having tea one day, and she's just like, yeah, I just hate this.
Yeah,
she's like, girl, what?
It's like, I don't like my dad for this reason. She's like, I didn't ask.
Yeah, and that's the whole. Wow.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad she confided in someone.
Yeah, so she confided in Victoria Schlittenbauer, who immediately goes to tell her husband, Lorenz Schlittenbauer. And Lorenz is like, that is fucked up.
Yeah.
And he reports the relationship to the police. And
the natural reaction.
Yeah, incest was a really grave crime as well at this time, especially in Bavaria. So the two were immediately arrested and convicted with the testimony from the Schlittenbauers and other neighbors, because apparently they were also like, yeah, there's something weird going on with Andreas and Victoria. There's something up with that. That's not a normal like parental love relationship.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay.
Some of my sources also mentioned that Victoria's half-brother Martin Assam. There's also a couple of my sources references, but it wasn't in all of them, so it's worth mentioning, but take this with a grain of salt. So Martin Assam possibly saw his stepfather and half-sister while he was living at the house and, saw what was going on. And also Martin was the eldest, and he probably was also like, hey, I should have been the one to acquire Hinterkaifeck. It should have been my farm. This should be my inheritance. But when Victoria became the inheritor and he became second in line and also received a much lower inheritance, I think like the percentage of money, if Victoria had like $1,000, Martin had like 200. It was a way off in the inheritance.
Yeah,
so
they're like, you can have a cow if it's left.
Yeah, it was really like you really were like, you're not part of this family sort of thing. This is what I can understand of how Martin was treated throughout the story. So
he had no problem spilling the beans on this. Like, he was just like, yeah, fuck those guys.
But also that's also a possible like other motive, like maybe why he would be really like gung-ho about this was like, oh, if I can get them in trouble, maybe I can get something out of this. So I take that with us. It wasn't in all of my sources, so take that with a grain of salt. Maybe Martin testified. Maybe he had an incentive to do so. I'm not sure. But I think it's worth mentioning.
Yeah.
At any rate...
It's a possible motive. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. At any rate, the two were sentenced to 1 year in prison each.
How old was...
I'm not sure how old they were at this time.
Okay.
This was a couple of years before, so Victoria would have been in her late 20s, and Andreas would have been in his late 50s, early 60s, I'm going to say.
Not that it makes it any better, any worse. I just was curious.
Yeah, I didn't write down their specific ages for this moment, just also because the records are just wibbly-wobbly.
Yeah, it sounds like you said things are kind of just all over the place.
Yeah. Yeah, so they were both sentenced to 1 year in prison, but a lot of my reports said Victoria only served 1 month. And I could say that this is also possibly because she was a new mother. She, had just had this baby Cecilia, so maybe she only served 1 month and then she was released early so she could take care of her newborn because she was a widow.
That makes sense.
Another thing to add to this part of this horrible history, Victoria was always adamant that Carl Gabriel was Celi's father. But because of the conviction, her parentage was always kind of in doubt. It was never confirmed that Carl was her father. And a lot of people speculated that Andreas was actually the baby's father because of this relationship. But Victoria was always like, no, 100% Carl was the father. And there's that. There's also something to consider here that Carl, before he was sent off to war and killed, he didn't live in Hinterkaifeck. So he married Victoria. They were like together in Hinterkaifeck for a couple of months, and then he returned to his own homestead. So he returned to his family farm and lived there for a time before he departed to war.
Oh, so the chances are even more slim.
It's a weird time frame, and a lot of witnesses claimed he left as a result because of the assaults. So he saw what was going on with his wife and his father-in-law and was like, I need to get out of here.
Yeah.
So it also kind of creates this further shadow of Celi's parentage, essentially.
Yeah.
So.
Very suspicious timing.
We don't know. We just don't.
Yeah.
So naturally, because they were publicly convicted, this was now super public dirty laundry. And the whole of Kaifeck knew it.
Yeah.
So
how big was this town that they were in? Did we actually specify
I couldn't see, because Kaifeck unfortunately it's not Kaifeck anymore. It's kind of been rezoned. It's Weidhofen. I'm not sure how big the original Kaifeck was. I'm not sure how much is retained.
Yeah.
But I think it's a decent sized town, and there were a lot of farms. We'll talk about a lot of the neighbors as the story goes on, but there were a lot of people around here. And everyone kind of knew the Grubers in town for one reason or another.
I mean, bad news travels pretty fast. So.
Yeah, and gossip, especially where did you hear what happened at the Gruber house? Oh my goodness.
Yeah, I'm sure that was around town in a day.
Oh, just you wait. Just you wait.
Oh gosh.
Just you wait. So, naturally, Andreas and Victoria returned home after their respective prison sentences, 1 year, 1 month, whatever it may be. But the town was pretty much that's still going on. And pretty much the entire of Kaifeck was convinced that this was the whole thing was still happening. I'm optimistic, but I'm gonna be honest, it probably was not contained within a 3-year period, and I'm gonna say that 1 year in prison is probably not gonna curb this behavior.
Yeah, probably not.
Yes. So, unfortunately, now remember at this time as well, there's a little thing called World War I happening in the background. It's what claimed Carl Gabriel, and he would not be the only member of the family to be claimed by the war. Oh. So Martin SM, the eldest son, was drafted into World War I in 1915, same year that his stepfather and half-sister were convicted, and he fell in the line of duty in 1916 at the age of 36.
Wow, so this is a crazy year for the family.
Yeah, so now there are only 2 surviving kids, which is Cecilia and Victoria. Cecilia is married to another farmstead. She's living her best life somewhere else. Victoria's the only one left that can inherit Hinterkaifeck.
Wow. Okay.
Yes. Speaking of tragedy, July of 1918, Victoria Schlittenbauer, the next-door neighbor who Victoria confided in, also passed away.
Just, out of nowhere?
I could not find a cause.
That's suspicious.
I'm gonna say it was probably illness, but I think you're fair. It's fair to be suspicious, especially with who her husband was. So, her husband, Lorenz Schlittenbauer, he's the one that kind of told the police about what was happening over in the Gruber house, but naturally he's devastated. And originally he was very close with the Gruber family, Victoria Gabriel in particular.
Oh no.
So the two, they started courting. Within the span of months of losing his wife, Lorenz is I cannot live my life without a Victoria.
Wow.
There's a convenient one over there.
I bet that's the line that got her. I can't even imagine.
I can't live my life without a Victoria.
Yeah,
There's so many to choose from. Like, how could you just choose one?
And that's what like really honored. Like, she's like, what? There's so many, and he chose me. Like, wow. Yeah,
yeah.
Flirting back in the day was easy.
Courting, man, it's the courtship of it all. Well,
romance.
The romance of it all. So Lorenz and Victoria, they start courting, and things get very serious very quickly. Same year they start courting, same year that Victoria Schlittenbauer passed away, they're like, hey, wouldn't it be crazy if we got married?
Oh my gosh.
Wouldn't that be like...
Why did I know you were going to say that, but I'm also extremely disappointed in them at the same time. Like, I'm just like, like a parent just shaking my head right now. Like, of course.
I mean, I guess for us in our time period, it is like, whoa, that's like not in good taste. But also, like, keep in mind, Victoria's mother, Cecilia Gruber, did the exact same thing with her husband and her new husband.
You're not wrong, actually.
So
that's just the time.
Like, it's just the time.
And they don't got much time, so you better live it. Okay?
But I think, especially as a widowed mother,
yeah,
like, you know how women were treated. Like, if you were a single mother, you were like ostracized. People did not like you. You were impure. You were taken. Like, you were tainted. Someone else had touched you. Like, you weren't worth the dirt you walked on. So the fact that another gentleman was like, I don't care that you're a single mother with kids already. I like you.
You gotta jump on that.
Like, whoa. Like, what a revolutionary idea. Like, yeah, absolutely. Like, please come in here and inherit the Hinterkaifeck farm. Absolutely. And Andreas was like, no, absolutely not. He was like, don't you touch my daughter.
Well,
no freaking surprise.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, unfortunately, he is her father, and he actually went as far as to ban any further marriage prospects with his daughter, period. Not just with Lorenz, but ever. He was like, you will never remarry.
And aren't they neighbors too? Like, that's the funny part of this happening. He's just like, nope, you can't have her, and she's just like, well, I'm just gonna like go next door, Dad. Like,
they are neighbors, and they were close, and they were they're like past each other on the street. I think some of my sources said that Lorenz was like the town guide, like he was like the person to know, and he is getting shafted by this family.
That's so funny that like there's the family to talk about, and then there's the guy to know. Like he's
yeah, it's
that's interesting. I don't know.
Yeah, like you can't make this up. Well, 1919, the following year, Victoria gives birth to her second child. Out of wedlock. A healthy baby boy named Josef Gruber.
Are they allowed to get married now, sir?
Well, so here's the thing. Victoria states that Lorenz is the father. They had a very intimate relationship when they were courting. When they were in the throes of passion and rebound and whatever those feelings were, they were passionate.
Yeah.
And so Victoria's like, absolutely, he's the father. Put it on the birth certificate. Father of this kid is LS. Lorenz Schlittenbauer.
Yeah.
And Lorenz is like, that ain't my kid. No way.
Oh, okay. No. I didn't expect that response.
No, he was like, no, that is not my kid. And he's like, hey guys, remember that conviction that this family had a couple years ago?
No, he didn't.
He is like, the father of this baby is not me, but her father, Andreas. People of Kaifeck. It's happened again. He was like, let's take this to court, baby. This is happening again, and look what we have created. There's this baby named Josef. And he is not mine. He is Andreas.
I am just appalled at the audacity of that man.
But I'm like, also like, was he wrong?
I don't know, but the audacity. I don't know.
And I think
but I don't think he knew either.
No, nobody knew. There was no way to know. But I think
But
that's the problem. Nobody knew, and there was no way to know.
Yeah.
But both choices were very viable, unfortunately.
If only someone had blue eyes or something.
So they go to court about it. They're like, we're gonna take this to court, baby. It's like, Andreas is like, no, you've gotta take responsibility for knocking my daughter up. And Lorenz is like, I didn't do it. It's you crazy motherfucker. You horrible. We'll get you convicted a second time, baby.
You're not allowed to marry her, but also step up. You got her pregnant, sir. Like, yeah. I love the dichotomy on that.
Well, see, there's the motive, right? There's the motive. Because if you take responsibility but you're not getting married, what does that mean? It means money, baby.
It does. So how do they decide this? Is it like whoever the baby crawls to? Like, that's the dad. He crawled to that one. That's him. Like, how do you decide this? Like, what do they have paternity tests in 1922?
The way that it went was, at first, it was 100% on Lorenz's side. Was like, yeah, Andreas, like, you've kind of got like a reputation of being kind of a motherfucker. So, like,
you're kind of a son of a bitch.
You're kind of a son of a bitch, you know? Like, you're kind of a dick. You're kind of an asshole. And Lorenz was like, yeah, absolutely. Can I change my statement?
What?
And then the courts were like, wait, Lorenz, you're changing your statement? And he's like, yeah, I just want to retract a couple of the things I said because they weren't true.
What?
And the courts were like, if they weren't true, then you have no... What?
You can't just retract some of them. You were no longer what?
So yeah, he became an unreliable witness because he was like, just kidding, I want to backtrack some of my statements. And the courts were like, that's not how that works. Unfortunately, we have to go with Andreas on this one because you backtracked.
And he almost got away with it if it weren't for his meddling, stupid self. Like, what the frick? Like, I'm so appalled that he literally... I feel like he was literally about to... If this was him, he was about to get away with it. He's about to walk out scot-free. He blamed this baby on the other man. And then he's just like, you know what? Actually, hold my beer.
Yeah, he was like, wait, you guys aren't fucking this up for me. Let me do it myself.
Yeah, literally self-sabotage, man. Okay.
I think it really was. But I also, like... Lorenz is a very interesting character throughout this whole story, and there's a couple of explanations, there's a couple of motivations. Well, I will get into all of it, but essentially what came out of it was Lorenz was forced to pay alimony and child support for Josef. So now he's paying as a baby daddy. He's like, whether he's your kid or not, he's your kid, here you go.
And they're just neighbors this whole time, too.
And they're just neighbors this whole time.
I love that. I like to think that he, like, doesn't want to talk to them, so he still puts, like, the child, check in, like, the mail and, like, makes the mailman walk it over to the next house, like, because he, like, won't deliver it himself.
Don't read ahead. don't get ahead of me.
I swear, if that actually is foreshadowing.
We'll get there. So,
man.
November 1920, 2 years before the murder.
Okay.
The family hires a new maid to work for the family, called Kressensreiger. My guess is that she was to help around the farm, kind of help take care of the kids. You know, Cecilia Senior and Andreas are getting older now. They're approaching their 70s, their 60s. And I'm like, look, people in that time period, they didn't really last much longer after that. Victoria is a single widowed mother with 2 small kids. And all of her surviving siblings have either left the farm, and the other ones have unfortunately not been able to leave the farm. So, help greatly needed. They're like, get in here, Crescents, we need you.
Yeah, no background check, just
get in here, baby, like, no questions asked. A year later, Kressensreiger's like, I'm out of here, bitch, I'm quitting.
I wonder why.
I cannot work under these conditions, but not for the reason you think.
Oh.
She's like, I can't work here because the house is heckin' haunted, guys.
Oh, that's not the reason I would have thought. No,
she was like, guys, this house is motherfucking haunted. I cannot work under these conditions.
Who did she claim it was haunted by?
Well, so Reiger had been hearing some strange sounds throughout the house, specifically from the attic. And the noises were especially loud at night. So Reiger's like, hey, Boss Andreas, sir, your house is haunted. We should do something about this. And Andreas is like, there is no ghost. What are you saying to me right now? There is no ghost in this house. Nobody has died in this house. There is no ghost in this house.
Yeah.
And Reiger's like,
that's exactly what someone would say if there was a ghost in the house.
Reiger's like, pretty sure a lot of people have died in this house, but look, I ain't messing with no ghost. And she just fucking leaves the farm September 1921. She's like, I'm out of here. I cannot work.
She's my favorite character. I respect that woman.
She comes back. So
no, in true horror story fashion, she comes back.
She comes back after the fact. So like, well, she's fine. She's fine. She lives a long and healthy life, probably. But
probably
for right now, she leaves the farm. All right, so here's the thing to note about the Gruber family. They were very secretive, but like in the worst ways.
Yeah, it sounds like they're bad at secrets, though, too.
They're very secretive. They didn't like to talk to their neighbors. I can't imagine why. But also their dirty laundry was like everyone's favorite gossip. So like everyone kind of knew what was up with the Grubers, but the Grubers never said what was up with the Grubers. So, like, if they were suffering, like, it was all kind of like gossip is how people knew about it, rather than them going, guys, I can't believe it, our maid quit because our house is haunted. That wasn't what was up. They were kind of just like, hey, did you hear why the maid quit? Like, does anyone know about that? It's like, I don't know, maybe the house is haunted. It's more like that, where it's like, everyone's got their eye on the Grubers. The Grubers like, don't look at me. Don't look over here.
I get it.
Yeah.
I don't want to be those people.
Yeah, and unfortunately, the Grubers were also in no hurry to leave. They're like, this is our farm. We live here. Our secrets are our secrets. You can gossip about us all as one, but you can't get rid of us that easy. And people are like, okay, I guess.
Yeah.
So the hauntings
keep gossiping.
Yeah, so the hauntings kept ramping up.
That's a twist. I didn't expect this to get haunted.
Yeah, no, well, we're getting haunted.
Oh, we're getting haunted. We're getting real spooky up in here.
We're getting spooky. Not only is this a mass murder, it is a haunted horror story.
We're getting real spooky up in here. I did not expect that.
We're getting spooky. So the hauntings are ramping up, and the Grubers are like, psh, bitch-ass
We
ghosts.
ain't afraid of no ghosts.
Yeah, bitch-ass ghosts. So the noises in the walls at night were starting to get pretty pronounced. They were very loud. And they were ramping up. They were more frequent. They were like shutters in the attic, things like moving in the walls, just like...
Classic haunted stuff.
Classic haunted stuff.
Yeah.
And it just kind of continued until March of 1922.
Specifically March of... And then it just, like, stopped.
Well, if you remember the story the story kind of ends March 1922.
Oh, it sure do.
It sure do. So let's talk about March 1922.
Okay.
So, Andreas found a Munich newspaper dated March 22nd, 1922, in his house. Now remember, Munich is 43 miles away from Kaifeck.
Yeah.
And the Grubers didn't subscribe to this newspaper. It just showed up one day in their house.
I don't like that.
And Andreas is like, well, I didn't buy this. I didn't subscribe to this newspaper. So he tries to return it to the postman. He's like, hey, I think you delivered this to my house accidentally. Like, this isn't mine. Like, you should give this to whoever ordered it.
Yeah.
And the postie was like, nobody in this area subscribes to this newspaper.
Oh.
Yeah.
Dude, so like, my eyes are watering right now. Like, that's actually so creepy. Like, where did this thing come from? What the heck?
Yeah. This newspaper just shows up one day. Nobody in the area is subscribed to this Munich-specific newspaper. So, a few days later, after being heavily lubricated with a couple of beers in town, Andreas told his neighbors that he found footsteps leading from the woods heading to the farm, but there was no second set leading back into the woods. It was just a perfectly preserved set of tracks in the freshly fallen snow leading into the house.
Nope. That's a nope from me. You burn it down, you go stay in the inn in town. There's...
Yeah.
Oh my god, that's not okay. How do you, like, actually see that in your house, like, and then just, like, go to bed, like, nothing happened? You're just like, yeah, I saw some footprints, like, no problem, though, right? Like, right, guys?
What's the alternative? Like, Cecilia, her parents are probably dead at this point. Andreas doesn't have a good relationship with his parents, so he can't go back to his paternal farm. Where do they go? Victoria's husband is dead. She's got 2 small kids. They're not friends with any of their neighbors. Where do you go? All you have is this farm.
I don't know.
And now everyone knows it's haunted. Who are they going to sell it to?
I don't know.
So it 100% is like they should have left. But then you've got to remember, where would they go? What would you do?
Yeah.
So there. Think about that. Put that in your papa's spoken.
I hate it. I hate it.
Well,
sir.
we're not. Well, let's get into it. So, all the while, since the housemaid started, since she quit, since up until March 1922, the noises in the attic have continued. That has been a consistent.
Did they just, like, never check the attic? They just, like, hear this
No,
stuff?
they did.
Okay.
They went up to investigate the attic, and there was nobody in there.
But what about the footprints in the snow and also the newspaper?
This mass murder is unsolved.
I don't know how I feel about that.
Well, let's keep going. Let's keep talking about the weird stuff.
Yeah.
So, shortly after, a house key goes missing.
Oh?
Yeah.
As if it wasn't bad enough.
Yep. So, footprints in snow, weird noises in attic, newspaper shows up out of nowhere, and one of the house keys just goes.
I mean, it literally could have been a ghost up until this point, but ghosts don't need keys, lady. That's the problem here, is ghosts don't need keys. They read, they're very well-read ghosts. What else is there to do in the afterlife other than read about current events? But they don't need keys, and that's where this turns from a ghost story into a person story. For me. You're 100. You would know because you did the whole thing about fire ghosts, and never once did you mention that those ghosts needed keys. Didn't need
I would believe you.
Yeah.
Ghosts don't need keys. You've heard it here first.
That's the one problem with the story.
Yeah. Well, despite all of the stuff that's happening in the house, there's also strange behavior noted in the livestock. Because remember, this is a farm, and they have animals.
Animals always know what's wrong.
So, animals always know what's wrong. So the cows in particular were increasingly restless. And one cow in particular had escaped a handful of times. Just got loose, broke free, was running amok in the farm. And the family even said that they secured this cow. They locked it in the barn. Like, they locked the door. They tied this cow up. They double, triple, quadruple checked to make sure this cow wasn't going anywhere. Next day, it was running free on the farm.
I think one of them should have stayed out in the barn.
Sleep at the barn. Yeah. Well, I don't know. I don't know.
That wouldn't be me, though. I would have suggested someone else do it. I would have come up with the idea, but someone else is going to do it.
They're like, can anybody... That's not us.
Go sleep in the yard with the cows.
Go sleep in the barn. That's why they couldn't hold down a housemaid. Because they were like, no maid, go sleep in the barn for the night and see how the cow was getting out. She's like, no.
No, thank you. It's cold out there.
Not doing that. So... Andreas confesses all of this over a couple of beers, and the neighbors are like, you got that's a problem.
Yeah.
My guy, that's a serious heckin' problem. And they even tried to give Andreas a gun for protection from whatever was in the attic, whatever was taking the keys, whatever was delivering the newspapers. They were like, you need to protect yourself, you need to protect your family. Here, take a gun.
Yeah.
Here's a gun.
Yeah.
And Andreas was like, nah, I'm good.
Andreas, my guy, no.
Yeah, he's like, I don't need a gun. And the neighbors are like, okay, well, can you at least, call the police? Can you call them and, maybe have them check it out?
Yeah.
And Andreas was like, what are they going to do, an arrest a ghost?
Oh, my God. My guy.
So he's like, nah, gun out for me, police out for me, no thank you, BB.
Man.
Yeah.
This is classic horror movie, silliness of just nah.
It is a horror movie. I think that this is a horror movie. There's nothing more to say about this. It's just a bad situation and bad decisions and just bad. It's just bad.
It's just bad, and then it just gets worse. You're like, wow, that's bad, and then worse, and then worse, and then worse.
But then, what can they do? Where do they go? What's the alternative? I think is my question that I am posing to you and to our listener. What's the alternative?
I, for one, would go have a slumber party with my neighbors that don't necessarily like me but know who I am.
Yeah, go hang out with Lauren Schlittenbauer. Hey, our house is haunted.
Yeah.
Can we stay over?
I think they would be understanding under the circumstances.
Well, we're going to talk about the neighbors after. And maybe this will change your mind.
Oh.
I don't know.
Oh. Maybe.
Anyway, so Andreas is like, no gun, no police. We'll deal with this ourselves. The Gruber way. The Gruber way, we deal with it ourselves. And the neighbor's like, all right, well, we can't tell you what to do, so that'll be that.
Yeah.
So March 30th, 1922.
Oh, no, we're getting close.
We're getting real close. Andreas discovers that a lock on the machine room door has been broken open. So this was one of the few outdoor buildings that didn't connect to the main house. Mm-hmm. It was attached, but it wasn't a direct line into the main house.
Okay.
So there was no threat of someone using this as an internal walkway to get to the main house.
Gotcha.
The stables were connected and the barns were connected, but this particular machine room, it was an isolated room. It was attached to the barn, but yeah, okay. It was
but it's on
a lock is
thing.
Broken, but my family's not in danger, even though we're missing a house key.
Yeah, okay. I beg to diff, but...
So, yeah. There were also traces of an attempted break-in on a door that led to the feeding room. So, someone's just skirting around this farm.
Yeah.
Someone's trying to get in, and they got in. So, March 31st, 1922.
Oh, no.
Celie, little babysit Celie, she was reported as being tired at school and fell asleep in class. When asked why, she reported that the whole family had spent the night before searching the woods for their mother, Victoria.
Excusez-moi?
Yeah. See, Victoria had fled the house, screaming that someone was watching her.
She just ran away? Like, she literally is just like, someone is watching me, goodbye, and just left her family and ran out into the woods alone.
So she starts getting worked up. She's like, people said, the family, there is someone watching me, I'm scared. And this ends up in a violent quarrel. And I didn't say with who, but I can only assume it was with her father, Andreas.
Yeah.
And this violent quarrel ended up with Victoria fleeing into the woods.
Oh my gosh.
And it took hours to find her.
Oh my gosh.
When they did find her, she was still convinced that there was someone in the house and was inconsolable.
I can only imagine what she saw.
And we'll never know. We'll never know what she saw.
Yeah. Oh, I hate that for her. I hate that for her. Because clearly she saw someone, and they're just like, no, your eyes are playing tricks on you. You're just hallucinating.
Is that a woman in hysterics that I see over there? Is that a hysterical woman?
Ugh, another one?
Oh, I just let her go into the woods. She'll calm down eventually.
Right, and after like 3 hours, they're like, man, she's still not back?
I mean, the fact that they made her 7-year-old daughter go into the woods to look for her.
That really says a lot about society at the time.
Yeah, so.
Wild.
Also, that morning, March 31st, 1922, Victoria and Andreas go shopping in town. And Andreas notes to a hardware store owner that there were nocturnal noises in the attic and a cow had gotten loose in the night.
Define nocturnal noises for me.
It didn't say. It just said nocturnal noises in parentheses.
Okay.
So, nocturnal noises. Noises of the nocturnal variety.
Yeah, all right. I want to see that under like a subtitle one day on a show, like, you know, just
nocturnal noises.
Yeah. That's like some like What We Do in the Shadows. Like they're just, it's like a scene of them just doing random things, and they're just like nocturnal noises. Oh my gosh. Sorry.
Yes, that's what's happening in the attic. It's 3 vampires dancing.
Just random standard nocturnal noises.
Yeah, just classic nocturnal.
Oh my gosh.
You've solved Hinterkaifeck. Well done. No. So, later that same day, around 11 a.m., the Gruber's new housemaid, a woman named Maria Baumgartner, was escorted by her sister to Hinterkaifeck.
For her first day of work.
So, her first day of work was the next day.
Okay.
So, Maria Baumgartner was 45, and her first day of work was supposed to be April 1st. According to her sister, Maria had a shorter right leg, so she walked with a limp.
Okay.
She also, in some of the case reports and some of the testimony that her sister said, she also stated that Maria was mentally handicapped.
Okay.
Which is why she struggled to find work or a husband. That was a big thing.
Oh, gotcha.
She was also allegedly terminated by her previous employer because she didn't want a handicapped person to work with her.
Oh.
So.
Well, I mean, it was good that they were letting her come to work there, I guess. Unfortunate under the circumstances, though.
Yeah, I think Maria had a really rough life, and I think people were very quick to dismiss her.
Yeah.
And I think the Grubers were desperate, and I think it was just kind of like, we need a housemaid. Our house is haunted. She's the only one that can do the work. Just get her in here, and then we'll figure it out.
Yeah.
So.
That's unfortunate.
At any rate, Maria moved into Hinterkaifeck on March 31st, and her sister left her in the care of the Grubers at 6 p.m.
Oh, gosh.
Maria's sister was likely the last person to see the Gruber family and her sister alive. April 1st, 1922. 2 coffee salesmen named Hans and Edward Shirowski came to Hinterkaifeck sometime in the morning, expecting the Gruber family to place an order with them. The 2 knocked on the door repeatedly and even knocked on a window, but there was no answer.
Oh, no.
The 2 observed that they could hear the cows mooing, and there was smoke coming out of the chimney. So the fact that no one came to the door was a little odd.
Yeah, it wasn't like back, like, or now, where you can just be like, not home. Like, it's pretty obvious that someone's home. And they just kind of like, you just like stiffen us. Like,
yeah, it's like there's smoke coming out the chimney. The animals moving around. They're like, hey, you want to buy some coffee?
Yeah.
Like, hey, like, At least answer the door and say no.
Yeah, exactly. They're just like, man, those rude Gruber people just not answering the door.
But also, like, they were the rude Gruber people. They were known as the rude Gruber people. So I guess this behavior wasn't necessarily unexpected.
Yeah. Didn't raise that many red flags.
No, which is kind of what explains what happens next. So these two brothers, Hans and Edward, they walk around the yard. Didn't see anybody around. They noted that the gate to the machine house was open because it had been broken into the night before.
Yeah.
The two were not alarmed. They were like, you know, it's just the Grubers being the Grubers. They're just antisocial fucks. They don't want to talk with us. They left the farm.
Yeah.
That evening, a neighbor named Michael Pohl walked past the house on his way home from work. He noted that the kitchen door was open, and he could see either a heater or a stove was on.
Okay.
As he was passing, someone shined a light into his eyes from a pocket lantern as he was passing the farm. And, you know, as one would expect to believe, he just assumed that man was Andreas Gruber, and he was like, all right, well, he's just being a dick.
Yeah. Okay.
And then he left. Yeah.
That is so suspicious and creepy and horrible, and I don't believe that was Andreas for a minute.
April 2nd, 1922. The whole family missed Sunday Mass. And that was a no-no.
Yeah.
You don't miss church. And the neighbors were like, that's a big no-no. Like, even though it's like it's the Grubers, like, that's a dick move for the Grubers.
Yeah.
Like, they wouldn't do that. But they were also like, but like the Grubers, they're secretive. They don't really like us. So they were like, you know, maybe the whole family just like came down with an illness. Maybe like they're all just sick.
Yeah.
And because they're the Grubers, they just didn't tell anyone, and they've just closed the doors. So they were like, okay, well, it's like that was really weird and kind of a dick move, but like,
a Gruber's gonna do what a Gruber's gonna do.
Yeah, they're like, we don't think that much on it.
Yeah.
There's also reports of a neighbor's son coming to buy lard from the farm, but he tried the door, knocked, waited several minutes, didn't get a response, so we left. April 3rd, 1922.
The days are just ticking by.
Silly misses school. And everyone's like, that's a bit weird.
Yeah, in combination with the Miss Mass and the not answering the door and the shining the light in the eyes and just leaving random doors open. And come on, guys, someone go check on this family.
Well, someone did go check on this family.
Finally.
And they went to investigate the house, but the livestock were well cared for. They were fed, and there was smoke coming out of the chimney. So they're like, oh, well, I guess the sickness thing is a thing. Maybe the family is just ill. They didn't come to church. Celia's just so unwell that she can't come to school. Things will return to normal sooner or later, so they left. A postman came by to drop off the mail and noted that the back door was partially open. He also noted that it was odd because baby Josef, the newborn, he was normally put in like a stroller in the kitchen, and he didn't see it in the kitchen. So through the crack of the back kitchen door, he didn't see the stroller, and he was like, "That's strange. Like usually that's there." But he's also like, well, you know, everyone in town is saying that the Grubers are unwell, so maybe just baby Josef's with his mother Victoria,
hanging out in the woods, running away like they usually do.
Yeah, just, you know, as one is off to do. He dropped off the post, then he left.
Wow. No one is asking real questions. Everyone is like mildly concerned, but also like cannot be fucked. Like they literally just like cannot be fucked. Like they are just like, you know what? Like that's probably a problem, but it's not my problem.
And yeah, it really is. It's the reputation of the family. It's the rumors and the gossip of the family. It's like, look what happens if you get involved with the family. Look what happened to Lorenz. Look what happened to the Schlittenbauers.
Yeah.
Like, if you get close to this family, you get nothing but misfortune. So it's kind of like we need them to do business with us, but we're not really invested in their well-being. It's just sort of like they're there, they're grumpy, they're there, they're a problem, but they're there.
Yeah.
Like, we just sort of let them be, they let us be. We do our business, they do their business, we don't mess with each other. That's it. And it really comes through in the story as people were like, yeah, I mean, guess that's the Grubers.
Yeah, it's weird how, like you said, like just invested everyone is in like the gossip and the rumors and wanting to talk about these people when it comes down to like their actual well-being. Like something is clearly off right here, like a kid not coming to school, like them not showing up for church, like, and just know everyone's just like, yeah, that's kind of weird. Like it really, really shows the lack of care and just like the reputation that this family really carried, because like that is just mind-boggling.
Well, April 4th, 1922. A repairman named Albert Hoffner arrived at Hinterkaifeck to repair an engine. So Albert had made a deal already with Andreas. He'd already communicated. He's like, scheduling an appointment. Here's the payment up front. Like, I'm going to come on this day to fix the engine. You know to expect me.
Gotcha.
So
okay.
he was a wanted visitor.
Yeah, this was a prearranged thing.
Yeah, this was way before anything.
Okay.
So he knocks on the door and he shouts for the family, like, "Hey, it's me. It's Albert Hoffner. I'm here to fix your engine." And there was no response. And he waited for an hour.
Okay.
He waited, knocking on the door, calling out for people. He waited. He did that for an hour. No response. So he kind of was like, let me just look around.
Yeah.
Like, maybe I just caught them on an off day.
Yeah.
So he walks around and he sees that the livestock is well cared for. They're fed, they're taken care of, they're watered. And he could hear the family dog inside the barn.
Oh.
Which was locked.
Oh.
But he saw that the machine room door was open. And he's like, hey, that's where the engine is.
Yeah.
He'd also noticed that the machine room door had been fitted with a new lock.
I'm literally at a loss for words right now. Like, that is just too much for me.
So our boy Albert, he's like, I guess the whole family must be out, so I'll just go in there, get my work done, and the family will be back when I'm done, and we'll talk about it then.
Yeah, okay, sure.
Albert goes into the machine room and he just begins his repairs. He reported to people, he reported to police that he whistled and sang the entire time that he was working on this engine, so that if somebody did come home, they would absolutely hear him.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, it's Albert. He's coming to fix the engine. We can go and greet him because we know he's here.
Yes, yes.
So he deliberately made as much noise as possible to signal to whoever came home that he was there.
I'm working on your engine just in case you come home. You know, the classic song.
How did you know the words? It's so crazy.
My mom used to sing that to me as I fell asleep every night.
Are you perhaps of German descent?
It's a classic German lullaby, yeah. It made its way over to the western, part of the United States.
I believe it, absolutely.
That's an Alana fact for you.
Yeah. I love Alana.
It's first one.
So, yeah, he sang the whole time, and he did this for 4.5 hours.
This man's dedicated, okay? I like how no one's caring at all, and this one man is out here holding it down for the whole town, and is just like, you know what, man? Gruber's, I got you.
Yeah, he was there for 5.5 hours in total. But one just waiting, and 4.5 for just doing his job that he was paid to do.
And singing the whole time, like putting on a show.
Singing the whole time. He was singing opera by the end of it. He was just like, oh,
yeah,
Maria. The cows were like, that's so cool.
Yeah.
Well done.
Yeah.
Well done, Albert. Well, he concluded his work, and there was still no sign of the family.
Sus.
And so he's like, that's super heckin' sus. That, like, I've been here for 5.5 hours, and I have not seen a single human being.
Yeah.
But he's like, well, I guess they're just... That's just the Grubers being Grubers, I guess.
Yeah.
So he starts to back up and he starts to leave. But as he's leaving, he saw that the barn door was now open. And the family dog was now tied up outside the front door.
That is literally the creepiest thing ever.
So he checks the front door. He's like, okay, well, maybe they were just being dicks about it. They came home, they heard me singing, and I was putting on the show of my life. Like, let me see if I can get someone's attention. Front door is still locked, and there's still no response.
At what point do you call the police? Oh my god.
At what point do you call the police, right? So Albert's like, all right, family's home, supposedly, but nobody came to greet me when they got in.
Yeah.
Don't like that.
No.
Don't like that. I need to tell someone about this. I need to communicate my feelings to somebody.
Yeah.
So he's like, I know who I'll tell. I'm going to tell that guy Lawrence Schlittenbauer. Everyone loves him. He's the town guide. Everyone knows. He knows what's up. Man, maybe he knows something.
I had hope for all of a half a second. Don't talk to him.
So Albert goes to Lorenz and he's like, hey, buddy, guide of the town, friend of everybody in this town. I got a real bad feeling about Hinterkaifeck. And Lorenz is like, why are you worried? Why would you be worried? The Grubers are just the Grubers. They're just assholes.
Yeah.
And Lorenz is like, yeah, it's kind of weird that nobody's heard for them, but, like, calm down. And Albert's like, nobody. Like, weird stuff. I was there for 5.5 hours. Weird stuff was happening, and I don't like it.
Yeah.
And Lorenz is like, no worries. I'm going to send my sons to go and investigate. His sons, Johann and Josef, another Josef, and Johann, who were 16 and 9.
I mean, they had no problem sending the 7-year-old out to look for the mom. It really seems like child safety is
it's just a thing.
Yeah.
It's just a thing in Kaifeck. You just send your kids out to go investigate these horrible things.
They're just meat shields.
So he sends, pretty much. He's like, that's what children are for, right? We have a bunch of them, and we send them out in the woods, and we just don't hope for the best.
And we'll just have another one.
Yeah, it's easy. Lorenz sends his sons, who are 16 and 9, to Hinterkaifeck, like, just scope around, kids. See what you can find. Like, see what you do. So the kids go. The boys go and take a look around the farm. They see the dog tied up. They see the cared for livestock. Don't see a single person. And they come back and they're like, it's as he says, Dad, it's really fucking weird, but like...
But what else can we
Grubers.
do? Yeah.
Yeah, like we're children. We have no authority and we have no say in the matter. We're not going into the random house.
Yeah.
If we don't know, we can't get in.
I'm happy that they came back alive, to be honest with you.
Yeah. And Lorenz is like, okay. All right. You did good, son. I'll go and investigate.
Yeah. Okay.
So Lorenz contacts other neighbors, Michael Pohl, who was a neighbor before, who got the light shined in his eyes, and a man named Jacob Siegel, and they head towards the farm. And when they got there, the barn had been relocked.
Okay.
Yeah, so the barn is now locked. So the three are like, you know, this barn is doing a whole lot of crazy things. Something tells me that there might be something in this barn.
Yeah.
So they break the lock and enter the barn.
And what do they find?
And immediately they get the smell of decay. And that's where we're going to end part 1.
You did not tell me that this was going to be a 2-parter.
I sure didn't, and, surprise, it's a 2-parter.
Well, all that I can say is I'm really glad I'm not the Spookery audience, because I get to hear part 2 right now.
Yeah, you get the privilege. You get the Spookery privileges, ma'am. You're the VIP. You're in the restricted section, BB.
Oh my gosh.
But yes, that was our part 1 of our Hinterkaifeck. That was just the spooky what the fuck, and we'll get into the crime, the discovery, and the suspects in our next episode.
Ma'am, I'm reeling. This case had genuinely, I can't believe how spooky it is. I need to know what's going to happen from here. I just, who is in the house?
Yeah, and it's like, maybe I have the answers for you, and maybe I don't. I just don't know. But it's such a cool case, and I'm so glad that you're in it with me, because, it's kind of got everything, right? It's kind of got that creepy, it's got that haunted, it's got that, it could be, it might be, and I can't wait to hear, how you digest the suspects, because I have a feeling, I think I know which way you're leaning, but I'm gonna see if I can undo that line of thinking. I'm confident.
We'll see. I mean, stranger things have happened, but I'm pretty heavily slanted currently. I need to know. I got to know.
Yeah. And, maybe you'll never know. But thank you for going on part 1 journey with me, man. What a fun tale. What a crazy tale. God, I love a good axe murder. What can I say?
Absolutely. I'm really interested to see what happens in part 2, but thank you so much for part 1. Until next time.
Yeah, stay spooky, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Yes, excellent. Thank you. Thank you. Farewell. Auf Wiedersehen. Goodbye.
Goodbye.